Have you ever noticed how life can be at the same time light and unbearably heavy? The truth is that much of our suffering comes from something so subtle that we barely notice it: attachment. But what if I told you that the more you let go, the richer you become emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually? It seems contradictory, doesn't it? And yet, this is the essence of the greatest lesson of Buddha. Freedom is not in possessing or controlling, but in living without invisible chains. In this video, you will discover how small changes in the way you relate to everything around you can completely transform your life experience. And for the first time, you may realize that suffering is not inevitable. It is a choice we can learn to abandon. If topics such as psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. From an early age, everyone learns to believe they own things: a relationship, a childhood friend, a dream job. But the truth is that none of this is really ours. It is like trying to hold water in your hands. The more force you apply, the faster it slips away. And the worst part is that, deep down, we always knew. There was always a silent voice saying, "This too shall pass." When a relationship ends, the pain does not come only from the absence of the other, but from the idea that it should last. The same goes for the death of someone dear or for a dream that collapses. We suffer because we create invisible contracts with life, as if it had promised stability. But life never promised anything. It is our illusion that deceives us. How many people have you seen swallowed by grief, not by love, but by attachment? How many friends collapsed when they lost a job because they built their entire identity on it? This is not love nor purpose. It is prison. And the more we believe that something is ours, the more hostages we become to the fear of losing it. Think about it. Even your body, which you call mine, will abandon you. It will age, it will get sick, and one day, it will leave you. And even knowing this, you live as if you could freeze time. This is the real tragedy, believing that life belongs to us. Suffering does not come from loss itself, but from the expectation that we would not lose. Since childhood, we are taught to conquer, to accumulate, to always want more. Society teaches you to grab, but never to release. No one talks about letting go, but everything that begins already carries the end within itself. Everything that is born is already dying. It is hard to accept this, but that is where liberation lies. When you call someone my love, my son, my wife, you reinforce this obsession with possession. But none of them really belong to you. Each one has their own soul, their own destiny, their own marked departure. Attachment turns relationships into invisible chains and life into a theater of illusions. Pain explodes precisely when our expectations clash with reality. You believe someone would be there forever. You trusted that a situation would not change. But the world does not recognize emotional promises. It only recognizes impermanence. And it is this resistance to the natural flow of life that destroys us from within. Buddha, Laozi, the Stoics, all shouted the same thing in different times. Let go. Let go, because holding on is what destroys you. What kills you is not change, but the illusion that things would not change. The whole world already knows this, but few really live this way. And perhaps it is precisely now that you need to hear this truth in a different way. Look around. Everything you call yours will one day slip through your hands. The partner you love will move on with life. Money will change owners. Even your clothes will rot or end up in a thrift store. You may resist this idea, but reality does not ask your permission to happen. And it is precisely this shock that generates suffering. The truth is that possession is a collective invention. You say, my phone, my house, my job. But deep down you know you control none of it. All it takes is an accident, a crisis, a sudden change, and everything can disappear in seconds. It is a psychological theater that we all perform. But life, relentless, respects neither roles nor invisible contracts. Buddha taught that pain is not born from the experience itself, but from the desire to control what, by nature, cannot be controlled. He called this thirst, a compulsion that turns every moment into something we want to imprison. The kiss, the hug, the joy. Everything becomes an object of possession. And it is in this attachment that we shatter. Think of couples who live as if the other were a property. Phrases like, "If it is not mine, it will not belong to anyone else," reveal more despair than love. This is not surrender. It is fear of losing. It is the ego trying to negotiate eternity in a universe that only knows impermanence. It is like wanting to write with fire and expecting it not to go out. Even children, whom so many insist on calling mine, do not belong to anyone. They have their own soul, their own destiny, choices you cannot control. Sooner or later, they will follow their own path. And life is like that. Each person who crosses your story is only a visitor. The sooner we accept this, the less we suffer when the departure comes. A Stoic philosopher said, "You only begin to truly live when you accept that nothing belongs to you." And this phrase could very well have come from Buddha's mouth. Because the truth, when deep enough, crosses any border, any religion, any time. Suffering is universal, but the way out of it is too. Neuroscience shows that our brain associates pleasure with repetition. A dear face, a happy memory, a valuable object. Everything is recorded as something to be kept. But reality does not respect this record. It changes, and the more we try to hold on to what changes, the more fragile we become. Because now our happiness depends on something external and unstable. Have you noticed? We lose and we suffer. We keep and we suffer too, because we live in fear of losing. It is as if attachment were an invisible prison, a psychological shackle that we carry without realizing it. And still, we insist on living as if it were possible to hold the sands of time with our hands. But what if there were another way to live? Everything in life is in constant motion, like clouds dissolving in the sky or leaves falling with the wind. Nothing remains the same, and resisting this reality only generates suffering. It is funny how we insist on thinking we can control the natural flow of things, as if life were an object we could keep on the shelf. Looking closely, we realize that every experience, person, or moment is temporary. That intense joy, that anger that seemed infinite, everything passes. Understanding this is not resignation, but clarity. You begin to realize you do not need to despair with every change, because impermanence is the only constant. Impermanence teaches us to value the present. How many times do we worry about the future or hold on to the past, forgetting that the only life we have is this instant? When we realize the transient nature of everything, even small things gain new weight, new value. A smile, a gesture of affection, even a silence share a unique importance. It is curious how resisting impermanence generates attachment, and attachment generates suffering. We want people to remain exactly as they are, events to follow a predictable script, nothing to change. But life never works that way. Accepting change is the first step to freeing yourself from this invisible prison we create for ourselves. A clear example is in human relationships. Friends, partners, family members, all are subject to change. Accepting this does not mean ceasing to love, but loving without possession, without rigid expectation. It is like contemplating a flower. You appreciate its beauty without plucking it from the garden, allowing it to follow its natural cycle. This perception of impermanence is also powerful in relation to problems. The pain, the frustration, the obstacles that seem unbearable today, tomorrow may have another shape. By understanding that everything is transient, you learn not to drown in each difficulty, but to observe and cross each wave without clinging to it. Living with awareness of impermanence transforms the way we deal with daily life. Small setbacks stop being existential crises, and happy moments become gifts that we really manage to absorb. It is as if life as a whole gained a more natural rhythm, lighter, without the need to hold on to each moment as if it were eternal. Gradually, the mind begins to realize that impermanence is not an enemy, but an ally. It teaches us that letting go is not losing, and that attachment is just a choice we can abandon. And when this perception strengthens, we open space to understand something even deeper. Emotional detachment leads us to live without fear of losing. How detachment brings emotional freedom. Detachment does not mean not caring, but freeing yourself from the weight we carry in our emotions. It is like taking off a backpack full of stones we did not even know existed. When you start practicing detachment, you realize you can feel without drowning, participate without consuming yourself, and live without suffocating under other people's expectations. The emotional freedom that detachment provides is silent but powerful. You stop reacting impulsively to small provocations, to criticism, or temporary losses. It is like learning to surf. We do not control the sea, but we learn to balance on the waves, even when they are unpredictable. Many confuse detachment with indifference, but the difference is subtle and profound. It is possible to love deeply, to engage passionately, and still not become a prisoner of external emotions. It is a delicate but transformative balance. You become the protagonist of your own life, not a hostage of circumstances. A practical example of daily life. Imagine someone hurt you with harsh words. The automatic reaction would be to hold a grudge or seek revenge, right? With emotional detachment, you feel the pain, understand the context, and let go without carrying extra weight. It is liberating to realize that no one can control your emotions without your consent. Detachment also allows more conscious decisions. When we are not trapped by the fear of losing or the need to please, we can choose paths more aligned with our values. It is like opening a window after years closed. The fresh air renews, brings clarity, and reveals horizons that were previously invisible. The practice of detachment requires constant observation. Noticing when rigid expectations, jealousy, fears, or the need for control arise is fundamental. Each small moment of awareness is an opportunity to let go and strengthen yourself. Over time, these small releases turn into lasting, almost automatic freedom. An interesting detail: detachment not only protects from suffering, but increases the intensity of positive experiences. When you live without fear, every joy is purer, every connection more genuine. It is like perceiving colors that were previously faded. Life becomes more vivid, more present, more real. Gradually, the mind understands that detachment is not giving up on life, but embracing it fully. You begin to flow with events, feeling each moment without getting lost in dramas or fears. And this emotional freedom prepares the ground for something even deeper: true inner serenity. Attachment to expectations and its trap. Expectations are like molds we try to fit reality into, and when life does not fit them, frustration arises. It is curious how we spend much of our time imagining perfect outcomes while ignoring what is really happening around us. Attachment to expectations creates an invisible prison that prevents us from living the present fully. Many times, we do not even realize we are trapped by them. We expect others to act in a certain way, events to follow a specific script, happiness to depend on external factors. And when life diverges from what we imagined, we feel deceived, wronged, or victims of the world. But the real issue is within us, in the attachment we created. A classic example is in relationships. We expect partners to meet all our needs, family members to understand every gesture, friends to never disappoint us. But this expectation is an invitation to constant frustration. Detachment, in this sense, does not diminish love. It protects us from being imprisoned by illusions that could never be perfect. The trap of expectations also extends to personal achievements. We want promotions, recognition, status, financial success, and we get frustrated when these desires are not fulfilled. It is like trying to control the wind. The more force we use, the more we feel its resistance. The secret is to act with purpose and let the result flow without enslaving ourselves to it. Perceiving attachment to expectations is a daily exercise of awareness. Every time we get irritated or disappointed, we can pause and ask, is this reaction about reality or about what I imagined? This small reflection opens space for the mind to free itself, transforming frustration into learning and tension into clarity. An interesting detail is that the more we let go of expectations, the more authentic our involvement with the world becomes. We begin to appreciate people as they are, situations as they present themselves, and life as it unfolds, without the need for adjustments or mental filters. It is a silent but profound freedom that begins to change our perception of what it means to live. And here lies the beauty of detachment from expectations. It allows us to act without fear, decide without haste, and feel without pressure. It is not about becoming indifferent, but about becoming fully aware, present and able to respond to life instead of automatically reacting to the mind's desires. Gradually, this practice reveals a fascinating paradox. By ceasing to control everything, life begins to flow in a richer, more intense, and meaningful way. And this freedom prepares us to understand something even deeper, that even control over yourself must be released. The relationship between suffering and identity. Many times we cling to ideas about who we should be or how our life ought to be, and that is where suffering settles in. That rigid identity works like armor that limits us, imprisons us, and blinds us to the fluidity of life. The more we cling to it, the more every change, every frustration hits us deeply. It is curious to notice how we spend our lives building a version of ourselves based on external expectations. Work, social status, the approval of friends and family become pillars of that identity. But when something threatens that structure, we feel fear, anxiety, and even anger. Attachment to the illusory I is one of the quietest sources of suffering. A simple example is the fear of admitting mistakes. Our identity often depends on the image we project. We are competent, reliable, strong. And any slip that contradicts that provokes immediate suffering. Understanding this dynamic is liberating. We realize that we are not our mistakes, nor our achievements, but something much larger and more fluid. The practice of detachment in this context involves observing without judging. When thoughts arise about who we should be, we can simply notice and let them pass, without blindly identifying with them. It is like watching clouds in the sky. They appear, change shape, but the sky remains wide and serene beneath it all. By releasing the rigid identity, we begin to feel inner freedom. We no longer need to prove anything to anyone, not even to ourselves. The pressure to match external standards dissolves, and we open space to act according to real life, instead of living in function of fantasies or fears created by the mind. Transformation does not happen overnight, but each small moment of awareness strengthens that freedom. Noticing when we are reacting to the ideal self or to others' expectations is a fundamental step. And over time, this perception creates a more authentic, lighter life that is more connected to the present. Detaching from identity also teaches us how to deal with criticism and judgment. When we understand that our essence does not depend on others' approval, harsh words or rejections lose power over our emotions. It is like discovering we were holding imaginary chains that prevented us from walking freely. Gradually, the mind begins to understand that true freedom is not in controlling the world, nor in shaping oneself rigidly, but in observing, accepting, and flowing. And that understanding prepares the ground for the next step, which is realizing that inner peace does not depend on anything external. How to live in the present without fear of losing living in the present is more than a motivational cliche. It is the key to reducing suffering. The more we cling to the past or project anxieties about the future, the more we flee the only reality that truly exists, the now. And the interesting thing is that the more we can focus on this instant, the lighter we become, even in the face of difficulties. The practice of the present moment requires attention and awareness. Small details that previously went unnoticed begin to gain meaning. The smell of coffee, the texture of clothing, the expression of someone you love. Everything becomes more vivid when we are not bound by expectations or fears. It is like looking at the world with new eyes, always curious, always attentive. A practical example is in human relationships. Many times we stop truly listening to someone because our mind is busy with judgments or memories of the past. Being present means really listening, feeling every nuance, and interacting without the interference of fantasies or projections. It is a simple change, but one that completely transforms the quality of connections. The fear of losing is a constant shadow when we cling. We worry about endings, farewells, inevitable losses. But by living in the present, we realize that each moment contains its own fullness. The secret is to value without imprisoning, to love without possessing, to act without being consumed by the outcome. This practice makes us more resilient. When we are connected to the now, challenges lose part of their emotional weight. Not because we stop feeling them, but because we learn to cross them with awareness without being dragged by fear or anxiety. It is a silent strength that manifests as inner balance. A fascinating detail is that, by living in the present, we begin to perceive the natural flow of things. Joy and pain, meetings and farewells, successes and failures, all are part of the same movement. Accepting this without resistance reduces suffering and increases the ability to appreciate life in its entirety. The daily practice is simple, but requires discipline. Observe the breath, notice physical sensations, register thoughts and emotions without clinging to them. Each small moment of awareness is a step toward inner freedom, an invitation to experience life without invisible chains. Little by little, living in the present becomes a natural habit. Feeling without attachment, acting without fear, perceiving without judging. These attitudes prepare us for the last step, the deep understanding that happiness is not a destination, but a state that arises when we stop clinging to everything. The path to serenity and inner peace, serenity does not arise from external circumstances, but from internal cultivation. When we learn to let go of attachment, impermanence, and rigid expectations, we begin to perceive that peace is available in every instant, regardless of what happens around us. It is a silent, almost imperceptible state, but profoundly transformative. This inner peace manifests as a light freedom. We do not need to react to every situation. We do not need to constantly justify ourselves, nor seek continuous approval. It is like walking barefoot on the sand, each step fully felt, without haste, without weight, without unnecessary distractions. A simple example: faced with bad news or an unexpected change, someone who practices detachment observes, feels the emotion and lets it pass, without drowning in drama or fear. It is not coldness, it is awareness. It is to perceive that each emotional wave comes, shakes, and then goes without needing to fight it. The path to serenity also involves self-acceptance. Recognizing limitations, mistakes, and imperfections without judgment allows us to stop fighting against ourselves. It is like finally stopping knocking on doors that will never open, redirecting energy to what really matters, to growth and full presence. The daily practice is simple. Observe thoughts and feelings. Meditate, breathe, allow yourself to feel without clinging. Each instant of awareness strengthens inner peace, and, with time, serenity ceases to be a conscious effort and becomes a natural state. Serenity, then, does not depend on external circumstances or material achievements. It is like a silent fountain within us that never runs dry as long as we learn not to pollute it with attachment, fear, or rigid expectations. The more we cultivate this practice, the more resilient we become in the face of life. And here is the fascinating point. The more we let go, the more we connect with the essence of existence. Each moment comes to be lived with attention. Each relationship becomes more genuine, and each experience, even challenging, contributes to inner growth. Gradually, we realize that serenity is not a destination, but a continuous path. It is the ability to live with lightness, freedom, and presence, even in the face of the inevitable changes of life. And by understanding this, we open space to reflect on something that transforms our perception of suffering and happiness. So, what did you think of these lessons on detachment and emotional freedom? Did you manage to notice where attachment still controls your life and how small changes can generate great transformations? I want to know in the comments which character or philosopher you want me to analyze in the next channel video. And if you want to continue learning how to live with more awareness, presence, and serenity, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you do not miss any content that can transform the way you see life. These two videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is only a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos on the side and begin to break that mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which will you choose?